on this week's episode of Tides of Lore.
If I was gonna die and I asked you to go with me, you'd go with me.
Have I failed Aloha? And with a desperation in his voice, he begs for an answer.
That is not a good way to deal with your emotions.
This great fire was going to consume their entire island, and that this great change was coming. And they believe in this moment that nothing could truly harm them. They're on top of the world.
He's like a lizard with a tail.
As if the universe itself held its breath before letting out a scream.
Want zombie!
Sooner or later, everyone comes to me.
Every episode of Tides of Lore is made possible by our amazing supporters. Thank you so much to Xander Harris, Brock Penrod, The Away Fan, Insulin FTW, Bubba BSE, and Arez Jerry. Your guys' support truly means the world to us, and if you guys would like to join the Tide, check us out on YouTube or Patreon. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the 43rd episode of Tides of Lore. My name is Robert Silva. I am one half of your host team, joined as always by my companion with the most mounts that I've ever met. How you doing today, Tim?
I'm doing well, man. I mean, you're catching up on me. I don't know if you remember last time you got as many mounts as I did, and then I said, this ain't happening, and I kicked it into gear, and I think that's what's gonna happen again. You are on my heels. I've been slacking, bro. I've been, grinding IRL, got a promotion. That felt good. And back on the hardcore
Congratulations.
grind. Thank you, by the way. Thank you. I've been back on the hardcore grind. I love my paladin in classic, so I never made a hardcore paladin. So, messing around with that. And then I have
You doing self-found? Anything like that?
I don't like self-found, man. I like being able to trade within my characters. So I don't like it's already hardcore, man. Like, I want to make it at least a little bit fun. So no, but I don't do anything stupid like fiery weapon or anything like that. I just like trade, gear and stuff like that between characters. But yeah, back on that. Oh, and then I have a shaman that I'm doing a duo with my homie Manny at work. So we got the shaman and he's a warrior. We're horde side for that one. Yeah, back on that hardcore grind. What about you, big dog?
I've been dealing with the cataclysm that has been us hitting 1,000 subscribers, and by that I mean just trying to set up the podcast on a bunch of different new platforms and stuff like that, as well as getting our new Patreon set up that we're working on. Outside of that, I mean, mostly just mount collecting still, mostly strictly in the Shadowlands. I've come to the brick wall that is most of like the Covenant special features, so like for the Ardenweald Covenant, it's like the seed growing thing. I'm trying to get the mounts from there, and from the Revendreth, it's like the court of whatever stuff. So that's what I've been up to. Mount collecting mostly. It's been a bit of a drier season for me in retail, and I mentioned last time that I was eyeballing classic, but then things got busier, so I've just been kind of hopping in on retail when I do have the time.
Yeah, dude, we almost have our friends. No, actually, a lot of them did get the 2000 Keystone Master.
Did it happen?
Yeah, I saw a swiper with it.
Wow.
I was working late the past couple nights, so I wasn't able to help him, but I helped him get to like 15, 16, 1700. And then I'm pretty sure they locked it in. They got 2K. First season ever that they did it. Dude,
well,
one of the guys never even played retail before. So
you guys heard it here first. If you've never played World of Warcraft retail in your life, you too can hit Keystone Master.
Just have to have some friends who can like kind of guide you on, like Murloc IO, and there's so many, you need so much information.
Niche things,
yeah, to do well. Yeah, super proud of them.
I mean, I love them, but I don't think statistics were their biggest glaring weak spot when it came to what was holding them back from a lot of their times and whatnot. It was standing in the damn pools.
Yeah.
And not moving the boss.
Not knowing what clockwise.
The concept of clockwise.
It was a good time.
I mean, honestly, it was an amazing time. Like I even mentioned it to Bub a few days ago, where I was like, at first, I was like, I can't have these guys reaching the same achievement I have. But then as I thought about it, I was like, no, I need to now prove it to myself that we are able to get them to 2K rating too. And
well, we need to get legend.
I mean,
now.
more credit to them. Exactly. That is how I still am gonna maintain my superiority. But to see them they have improved over these last weeks, has really been awesome to see, you know, from it being like, oh no, how are they going to time a 2? Like, they're barely timing a 2.
And
how
now
are they
they're
going to do
doing
this?
6, 7, 8s, dude. You know?
Now they're really up there. But yeah, that's been a real pleasure. But last week we also discussed a few things on the podcast, specifically covering the dwarves and how they're dealing with coming into creating the Council of the Three Hammers featuring Kurdran Wildhammer. What do you remember about last week, Tim?
Yeah, big dwarf story. We talked about Kurdran, the people's champ, at least for a little bit he was when he went to Outland. And I guess they didn't know what happened to him. You know, he left the dwarves. The dwarves kind of had to, you know, they have a life to live. They can't just live without a leader, right? So who took the steed of his place as the leader?
Falstad Wildhammer.
Falstad, yeah. So he does his thing. He's being a great leader. But then, you know, Kurdran's not dead.
Actually,
Well, wait,
ironically, ironically, I was like, we skipped over Kurdran, and I felt bad about it. We ironically skipped over Falstad too. He was part of the Day of the Dragon book where they free Alexstrasza from like the control of the Dragon Maw, and I
Grim Batal?
glazed right past that book. Yeah,
Talked about Grim Batal. What the heck? Dude, you're the lore master. What it was
we'll get back to it. Like we're doing today, we're gonna get back to it when it's more relevant. And not
that
just a
means you
footnote.
forgot.
No, I would never.
All right, but Kurdran comes back,
Yeah.
right? You know, he comes back, and I don't think he played it the best, at least from what I was hearing. You know, he was like, "I'm the leader now," right? Even though Falstad has been leading the people for like what 20 years, so very long time. So I would be kind of pissed as I was Falstad as well. But yeah, and then he wanted to form a ceremonial hammer for the 3 clans, but the clans weren't having that. Moira was in the mix, and there was an upset about that. Remind me of the whole reason there was an upset.
Well, originally this hammer was all broken apart when all of the clans broke apart during the War of the Three Hammers, a civil war that was like 300 or 400 years ago. And during that time, the hammer of the previous king of the dwarves before this, Modimus Anvilmar, has his hammer smashed into pieces, and each of the clans takes a piece of it. So like the Bronzebeards had the head of the hammer, and the Dark Irons had this gem, and Wild Hammers had this like the handle of it, and it over time just kind of became this ceremonial iron rod that they had in the Wild Hammer in the Airy Peak. And for a long time it like gave Kurdran peace while he was out on Outland. And then, yeah, there's like a huge conflict about him not really wanting to unite it. He doesn't really trust the Dark Irons. He doesn't really like Ironforge and everything that's happened and how it's going after Magni has been turned to a rock. And it all kind of leads to a big climax where he smashes it into pieces after being like, this is not the way to move forward for the dwarves. We're trying to move forward. Why are we chaining ourselves to the past? And it's actually a really cool story. If you didn't check out that episode, make sure you check out that episode. I was pleasantly surprised by that one. There's also a really sad story about his griffin tied in there, and I'm sure I'll mention what happens with that griffin egg that he does end up getting there later down the line too. So did I forget anything? Oh yeah, Moira is a certified shithead through the whole story. I don't know how anyone trusts her or how she even remains on the council after all the shithead stuff that she pulls.
Yeah, I remember not liking her. It's like, dude, if her, Gen, and I'm trying to think of another hated alliance person, but formed a group, they could be the evil part of the alliance, dude.
Her, Gen, and Garrosh from Warcraft 3.
There we go. The ragtag suicide squad of the alliance.
Fucking, that's a hilarious concept. See, this is what we missed out on in Shadowlands. This is what we really needed. But last week, you guys did also have a few comments for us, so let's check those out before we get into today's episode, shall we? Starting over with Jackson Head on Spotify saying, "Hey guys, love the podcast. Been playing WoW since I was 4 in Wrath with my dad and took a break around the end of Cata until BFA came out. I listen to the podcast while I'm at work, outside, landscaper, and it makes the days fly by, and as I get to learn cool shit about topics I truly love and have been passionate about for years and years. Please keep up the great work. I love you guys and hope you are doing well in life and in WoW." A lot of amazing comments.
Very nice. That's awesome to hear.
Yeah, it means a ton to hear such kind words for us as our channel's been growing. we've been getting a lot more of these, and it's just like, again, why I'm convinced that you guys are AI. I'm like, why are these people being so nice? I've never met the WoW community be so nice like this.
Well, it's because we're not playing Mythic Plus or PvP. We're just talking about the lore.
Because we're not actually playing the game.
Yeah.
But yeah, I did end up responding to Jackson, just being like, it's awesome to hear about you and your dad back in the day, because like when I think back to Warcraft 3 being like my very first PC game that I ever played, leading up to like the early 2010s, where my amazing mother was able to buy me a gaming PC eventually, and I was finally able to see like the progressions of all those stories that had been left off in Warcraft 3 for me. It was also an awesome moment, and I felt like a nice tie-in to your comment there. But we did also have the returning Gump Witch saying, man, I adore the Draenei. I am always grateful to see them get more lore, but this is such a weird story. There's literally no human kingdoms or settlements anywhere near Azure Mist Isle. Where the hell did they come from? Night Elves would have been a much more logical choice since Abradoon was destroyed and they're right next door. The same tensions and conflicts easily could have been explored there. Either way, great episode. Velen is the GOAT, literally and figuratively, and y'all can't tell me nothing about him.
That's funny.
I got a lot of respect for Gump Witch. They're very opinionated on where they stand for characters.
I mean,
I like to think that we are as well.
Yeah. You can't take anything I say and think it's the correct opinion. But Velen does seem cool. He does. He did. But just talk to the people. Take some time.
Yeah.
Like what the heck?
I do agree. At the very least, he could have just been like, guys, wait, I'm thinking. And that would have solved so many more problems. But I mean, even just hearing the story in general, like you think about the Draenei, they're like these peaceful people that like for so many years against the Orcs refused to fight against them because they were just like this, like, we know that you're being manipulated and stuff like that. And like, we only want peace. And then these refugees come running up on the exit and they get creamed by these Draenei. They were just itching for a reason to lay down the hammer right now.
Communication is not their strong suit.
Yes, not with the other races. Yeah, it was just a really interesting thing to see the Draenei behave like that, even with the insults that were being levied at them and stuff like that. And on the elf comment, of course the elves wouldn't. Like they said, it's just another day for an elf. You know, the world's ending. The world will try and end again. The night elves will endure.
Until for how long? Until their tree gets burned.
And then we'll build another, stronger,
it's never the
more
same,
dimensions this time. Finally, we did have Wind0309 saying, all this talk about the light reminds me of how interesting some of the different cultures and talk about the light, specifically the Tauren, is. I love how the Tauren culture, lore, faith, explained why they're able to be paladins and priests. Tauren lore / mythos in general is so cool to me. I love the vids dudes. Any comment from our resident paladin?
Tauren are cool. I just have never been a fan. Every time I play one, they're too big. I don't know. I've never vibed with them because of that, because I don't really have a character that I play that's a Tauren at all.
Mm-hmm.
So because of that, I know less about them, and I just, I don't have an affinity with them.
Yeah, I actually don't have too much info about their connections, at least in terms of being paladins. I do like how some of the more like druidic races, like the Tauren, like the Night Elves, seem to, kind of like they mention, have this different connection with the light, where it's like almost more of a natural thing that comes in their everyday life. Like the sun is how they kind of worship it, while other, races like humans or whatnot almost draw upon it from like this this entity, almost like a weapon to be drawn from. I thought that was an interesting concept that they really made me think of. So, and I'm really excited to see how that's going to progress moving into Midnight, having this culture of the blood elves who were previously, the high elves that worshipped, or that were, all about worshiping the arcane and stuff like that, where eventually they find the connection of faith when the Sunwell is eventually restored in Burning Crusade. So I'm interested to see how that progresses, because while faith was always kind of there with the blood elves, it wasn't ever like super integral to their society, not like magic was. So I'm interested to see how that progresses.
Hasn't that changed in the lore?
What do you mean?
Like the paladins don't really rely on blood magic and So then,
Yeah, that's what I mean. Is like, but not even necessarily blood like magic. Like even when the Sunwell was like the original Sunwell before Arthas and all that, like it was just an arcane magical well. Like they didn't have necessarily a faith to worshiping it like that. The Church of the Light would eventually spread through Quel'Thalas, but it wasn't because of the Sunwell. And now with the Sunwell, like we've seen in the Midnight Trainer, literally like Liadrin kneeling before the Sunwell, basically giving a prayer directly to the light. So I do foresee that becoming a bit more of a like religious theme, kind of. But yes, that is all that we have to discuss with you guys from last week. And hopping into this week, we got some trolls. I really went back and forth on if I wanted to tell this story, because we did kind of briefly talk about it when we discussed the trolls, but I thought I would throw my boy Bub a bone and give it the proper full read through that it deserves, because I do actually really like this story. Plus it does lead into some more of the troll content that we will get come Cataclysm and beyond. So let's just jump right into that, shall we? Hey Tim, did you know that Tides of Lore is a Patreon now?
oh yeah, what do I get if I throw some support on Patreon?
You'll get ad-free episodes, a member shout-out, live stream access, and exclusive VODs, the full package.
So basically, skip the ads, get your name in the show, and help us keep telling Warcraft stories.
Exactly. Join the Tide at patreon.com/tidesoflore. Starting with, there's this island, right? We're going back in time. Like I mentioned, we briefly talked about this 20 episodes ago, something like that. Troll episode was 16, so a while ago. So we're going back to a time just before the Third War, where Thrall currently is on his way across the ocean after being told by the prophet that he needs to go to Kalimdor to prepare to, save the world. So he's like, cool, I'll do it. So that's what Thrall's doing right now, to say our place in the timeline, just after freeing himself from Durnhold Keep, after uniting the Horde and getting off of the Eastern Kingdoms to go to Kalimdor to establish Orgrimmar and all that cool, fun stuff that he'll eventually go on to do. That's where we are. You got that island of Darkspear trolls. Specifically, if we remember, the Darkspear trolls are kind of this branch of the Gurubashi trolls, or at the very least, trolls that came out of the Stranglethorn Vale in the southeastern kingdoms, which eventually were just like, wow, these guys are like eating each other. We should probably get somebody out of here. So they do. Yeah, they leave. And they eventually find their home out in the ocean and found it. And it's not really a too important place, but it is just known as like the Darkspear Island. And that's where we come to our first main character of this story. Really, the only important troll to continue to exist in the story for any extended period of time, I feel like. Vol'jin.
Here come the voodoo.
Son of the previous leader of the Darkspear troll tribe, Sen'jin. I guess not previous at this point in time. Sen'jin is still very much alive. So he is still just a strapping young chap, probably the ripe age of whatever a troll equivalent of 16 years old is, because that's the vibe this story gives me, at least with how they interact with each other. But Vol'jin is there, at the edge of this great forest, or jungle rather, crouched, looking into it in this area that is known as First Home. And his feet are sinking into the mud, and his friend is behind him, his friend by the name of Zalazane.
Witness the power of me voodoo.
Childhood friend who he has, since their first moments of consciousness, remembered just messing around with and having the greatest of time. A bond that they say is truly unshatterable, one that would carry the Darkspear into the future. But even as Zalazane is behind him being like, hey man, they say that only like super badass proved warriors go into this forest, this jungle, and come out. And we're like scrubs. So why do you think we should go in there? And that's when Vol'jin does tell him a little bit. He's like, hey, you probably don't want to tell everybody this, but my father, who is one of these figures known as a Shadowhunter, he had a vision. And he had this vision in the fire that was given to him by the Loa to warn him of this upcoming doom, that this great fire was going to consume their entire island, and that this great change was coming, and that Vol'jin needed to be prepared for this change. And he's like, okay, interesting, hot take. So we have to like go in there now. And he's just like, yeah, I've never seen him acting up like this. So he basically was talking to me as if I was never going to see him again. And he's like, okay, interesting. So he's like, so you really think that we're going to go into this jungle? We're going to emerge out of this jungle after we go through all of these trials that they say that, are rumored to go on in this place. And we're going to emerge as Shadowhunters as well. And he's like, yes, exactly. That's the plan. And he's like, okay, well, I guess we'll see how that goes. And they both essentially give each other a shit-eating grin, one that has always marked the start of mischief amongst the two of them. And despite the fact that as they make their way into this jungle, and it teems with literal death, as there's tons of, toxic animals, sorts of things that would kill you in the jungle, but, obviously even to the Azeroth degree, fauna probably trying to kill you, all sorts of bugs probably trying to kill you. But this is just another day for jungle troll like Vol'jin, like Zalazane. And they believe in this moment that nothing could truly harm them. They're on top of the world, which is exactly why I placed them at about the age of 16, I feel like. And though First Home seemed like nothing more than just a jungle, the rumor was that the Loa were here, the spirits of the ancient trolls that transcend death itself and could grant visions and power and blessings, or even mete out cruel curses to mortals that they would like to see broken. And they talk about the Loa as if they have this divine judgment that is swift and unpredictable, one moment granting second sight into the future and the next driving somebody mad, so mad that they claw their own eyes out. So both Vol'jin and Zalazane know the true danger of First Home is not merely the beast or the poisons or any plant that they could find, but the spirits that walked unseen amongst these trees. And as they keep running, they're like, bro, everyone was making a big deal out of nothing. It must have just been suspicion. We've been running about here, and I haven't seen anything. And as they keep running through the forest, Vol'jin and Zalazane are, laughing and having it with each other when two of them are immediately proved wrong about just how dangerous this place is, as they both front slide directly into a monstrous Nambu, which the short story describes as a carnivorous plant with writhing fibrous teeth and a maw ready to swallow prey whole, which we don't get any indication as to what this could be outside of just this brief little snippet. So I am choosing to see it as the piranha plant from Super Mario Bros.
Well, or what about those threshers, those plant threshers? You know what I'm talking about? You see them in Ungoro Crater?
A humongous razor leaf. I remember these guys.
That's what I pictured.
Yep.
I don't know.
No, yeah, and this is actually probably the exact sort of scenario. But even still, if you want piranha plant. And they're like, oh shit, and they slide out of the way, and as Ben slides out of the way, he bumps into something else, and he was like, why is that shit scaly, and why did that thing feel like it was alive? And he turns around and he realized that he has now stumbled into something even worse. Massive raptor, larger than any he's ever seen, he says. And he does his best to evade these snapping jaws at him as they, is probably a scene directly from Jurassic, I'm gonna say World, because this one's a bit more of an action scene than the horror of actual Jurassic Park, as these snapping jaws just come ripping at him, so much to the point where he loses track of his companion Zalazane, who he could just hear somewhere off in the distance making muffled sounds elsewhere through this chaos. And throughout all this chaos, he's doing his best to fight off this raptor when he does realize that he is just about in the grasp of that Nambu plant, the fibrous teeth threatening to snapshot on him and him dodging out of the way at the last second, just as the raptor also dives at him when, munch, the plant bites onto the raptor, its poison coarse teeth filling the predator as the two creatures then begin tearing at each other, and Vol'jin knows that he only has a moment before he is once again caught up in the fray, and he takes this moment to pull out his ever useful warglaive.
Who has a warglaive?
Vol'jin. Have you never seen him use this warglaive? Pretty sure he even has it in the Broken Shore cinematic.
I guess just hearing warglaive, I only think of demon hunters.
Yep. But apparently trolls had him first. And as he begins to hop back into the fray with this raptor that rips this plant clean from the ground, he sees that his friend Zalazane has fallen to the ground, being munched on by a swarm of bugs, their bites and stings driving him into a panicked thrashing, and he realizes that he will be facing this challenge against the raptor at this time alone. And he does his best to strike at the beast, slicing bloody trail across its back when eventually the raptor shrieks, slamming its head into Vol'jin with cracking force, hurling him into the undergrowth as he begins to stumble blindly through these sticky jungle leaves, seeing nothing but feeling the world shaking around him as he knows that the raptor is once again charging straight for him. The predator's jaws snap an inch from his face as he feels it coming just at the last second and dodges out of the way, feeling its hot breath against his skin. And with this raptor bearing down, Vol'jin makes this desperate gamble as Zalazane is swept off. As Zalazane comes running in, he gets swept off his feet by the creature's tail, and Vol'jin takes the opportunity to leap forward, wrapping his long arms around the predator's neck, and for a heart-stopping moment, his face was pressed to its snapping jaw, its foul breath ruffling against his mohawk. Then inch by inch he wriggled into position and locked his knees across the beast's shoulders. As it buckled and it shrieks and it thrashes against Vol'jin's grip, Zalazane once again scrambles to his feet, striking back, smashing his staff against the creature's clawed foot, shattering its bones with a sickening crack. And with that, the predator refuses to yield, dragging its broken foot towards Zalazane, its eyes fixed on its prey. As Vol'jin holds on tighter, he pulls his glaive into position at the beast's throat, and he could feel its muscles coiling for one final strike against Zalazane, and Vol'jin carves his glaive, leaving the raptor's throat wide open. And it releases an absolute torrent of blood. I'm imagining a Kill Bill amount of blood that says literally a torrent of blood that sprayed across the clearing, as the predator staggered, swaying one way then another before collapsing in one final roar, its jaws landing inches away from Zalazane's feet. As the raptor bleeds into the ground, Zalazane bends low, his eyes gleaming with mischievous hunger, and he takes the beast's blood in his hands, smearing it across his face in a crude mask, and Vol'jin recoils. And he's like, "What are you doing, dog?" And Zalazane only smiles wider, declaring it to be the ritual of dark magics as he begins to lick the blood from his fingers, reveling in the grotesque performance and gestures for Vol'jin to come and do the same. And as the raptor's blood pooled into the earth, Zalazane argued that they should embrace the stench of this beast, because if other creatures smelt that they, smelt like this apex predator's blood, then they would know that they're in danger, that we're the new apex predators, and it would make them seem powerful, untouchable even. And Vol'jin's just like, bars. So he hops right in there. He grabs some of that blood and smears it on his face as well. And he's like, "Where did you learn all this?" And he's like, "The witch doctor back in the island. He told me about it." And despite their banter, the two of them do acknowledge the grim truth that despite it maybe scaring off beasts, there is something that it definitely won't scare off, and that is the Loa. But that moment of gravity is broke quickly into mischief with Vol'jin's eyes closed, Zalazane sticking 3 of these bugs to his chest. I'm imagining leeches because they're leaving him yelping with pain as he comes ripping back into his consciousness, no longer taken away by the idea of seeing these Loa quite yet. But with that, Vol'jin does swear that when he becomes a Shadowhunter, that he would beg the Loa to do the one obvious thing, and that is kill Zalazane. Careful what you wish for, dog.
Wait, they were homies?
They were homies, like ride or dies, day ones.
Because this is the homie on the island, right?
That's him.
Of the starting zone?
We're going to talk about him a bit more, like in that stuff later too, but yeah, that's him.
Wow.
But yes, as night falls over First Home, the jungle is dark, and Vol'jin and Zalazane only knew that it was this dark because, normally this jungle is just this dark, but they could feel that the air was cooling, and they press on until their feet are raw and their breath is ragged, and finally they settle down on the crown of a small rise, one side dropping sharply into jagged rocks and the other into the suffocating jungle, the exhaustion weighing heavily on them, but the silence of the jungle weighing even heavier. And that's when Zalazane asks the real questions. Where the Loa? Where they at though? Because they're like, yeah, we've seen beasts, we've been killing beasts, we've been surviving the jungle, but that's just standard shit. Like, we're supposed to be going on some mind-altering journeys. And just as Vol'jin's about to be like, I know, right? He feels the hairs on the back of his neck stand up. His spine chills, and he feels the presence of a Loa with them. And before he can even see it, he looks over at Zalazane and confirms, yeah, he feels it too. And he realizes that at last their first trial had truly begun. And then, without warning, Vol'jin is struck by this agony deeper than any wound he's ever experienced. He's dealt with injuries, cuts, whatever you want to call it, so many times. He's a troll. He can walk that off, and he describes it as worse than any of it. And as he clings on to his sanity throughout this torment, he begins to hear a whisper slither into his mind. The cliff, the rocks below, they could end your pain. It would be quick. It would be easy. And the suggestion is simple. Leap and end the suffering, or continue to endure and carry on. And of course, our boy Vol'jin chooses the hard path because it's the hard choices that get you where you want to be. As finally, what feels like an eternity passes and the torment breaks, and Vol'jin feels his body fall away from him as he floats freely, drawn into a vision. He sees himself older, more confident, at the head of a long file of Darkspear trolls marching through an alien land of orange stones. And in the distance, he sees a spiked city beneath the haze of smoke and the sound of war drums, and he recognizes the faces of not just trolls, but orcs, Tauren, and a figure who radiates with strength and wisdom, Thrall. And at first he's like, how do I know these names? How do I know what these creatures are? A voice rumbles through Vol'jin's every bones, and it was not a question of what he saw, but of why. The voice asks, why do you lead our people into subjugation? Surely it would be better to fight alone and proud, and to die alone and proud. And the Loa seems to demand why he fights. Is it for his pride alone? And Vol'jin thinks for a moment before answering in his clarity, and he says, we have to be alive to be free. If we're dead, we are lost. It's better to bide our time, to endure. And as his vision then dissolves for a fleeting moment, he beholds the Loa itself, it appearing as a glowing sphere, ancient and sorrowful, its surface shimmering with shifting images and fading shapes, its radiated wisdom tarnished by long ages, and a being that had lurked in First Home since time immemorial. And the Loa quickly confirms, they're like, good choice. Anyway, on to the next test, big dog. And he's like, okay, thank you. But as the Loa's presence begins to fade, it mentions a gift being given to Vol'jin. And it says, I grant you sight. And as the voice whispers, the world reshapes around him. And Vol'jin returns to the rise, sweat clinging to his brow, to find Zalazane beside him. And to their astonishment, they could now see the Loa, perceive what had once been unperceivable. And that's when days pass. You got Vol'jin, you got Zalazane. They're sitting by a fire. They're eating some nice, tasty meat, as you do. And at first they're like, yeah, we probably shouldn't have started this fire because, you know, dangers are all about in here, but we're top dog out here. What do we got to worry about? So they're eating. They're having a good time. And Zalazane reveals to Vol'jin what he had seen in his vision at the First Judgment. And he tells him that he saw himself as a great witch doctor of the Darkspears in a strange land where survival was uncertain, that his people were weak and struggling under their hardship, and that their leader was faltering. And he says that he admits he does not know who the leader in the vision was, but it was not Vol'jin's father. But he does go back to what he thinks is the most important part of the vision, and he smiles at Vol'jin as he says, I saw myself as a witch doctor, like it's happening, big dog, as both of them begin to smile at each other with pride. And Vol'jin confesses that for the first time in their lives, Vol'jin had lied to Zalazane, and he says that the vision that he had spoken of from his father, he mentions just how urgent it was, that it wasn't just something that was coming one day, but that it was right around the corner, which is why he needed to be on top of it now, and that his father had essentially demanded that he go and take the judgment. And he mentions again that this was the first time he had ever seen his father act like this, like he knew this was the last time he would ever see Vol'jin. And for Vol'jin, he thinks about the situation, and for this judgment was no longer just a test of his bravery or his skill, but a march into what he believed is his destiny. And Zalazane ends up teasing him, because he's just like, so, you thought, oh, I'm gonna die. I should go get Zalazane and bring him with. Why? Why would you bring me into this? And they laugh with each other, and he's just like, well, the truth is that I didn't think that I could do it alone. And I thought that even in times where I was weak or soft, that we would be able to have each other's back and get each other through the hard times.
That's kind of sus, man. That's, I don't know, misery loves company.
I think it's more like apes strong together.
If I was going to die.
But
And I asked you to go with, and you go with.
I mean, I would definitely prefer to know the full details of the story before.
No,
you're
I'm just
going.
taking you with.
You're just like, yeah, we're gonna go.
Yeah.
We're gonna
Hop
go on a
in.
hike, and you're like, okay, cool.
Push you off a cliff.
Yeah. You're like, oh, by the way, I spiked your bottle of water with ayahuasca. Have fun.
Yeah.
Well, that's not water. That's straight DMT. But their words break as a strange glow appears in the jungle, and as it pulses with power older and even less knowable to Vol'jin, he hears a whisper, compelling him to catch this entity. As he immediately shoots to his feet, Vol'jin flies off into the jungle, beginning to do his best to stalk this creature through the trees, ignoring Zalazane's shouts behind him as the branches tear at his skin. He does his best to continue stumbling towards this light, but each time he nears it, the glow blinks away only to reappear just beyond reach, and he realizes that the spirit is leading him, and he could not resist this call. But eventually, he's going. He's tired. He's like, I can't catch this thing. There's no way. And he begins to think, he's like, I'm not going to play the game that he wants me to play. If my goal is to find this Loa, and to fail means death, or to fail my people, then I will change up my strategy. And he's like, I'm going to do my best to essentially stalk it. And if it knows where I am, maybe I can lose it and try my best to sneak up on it. And that's what his plan is. We're eventually cut to him in this open jungle clearing where this patch of sky is visible above the canopy. And he feels, as he's stalking through this land, a warm heat press on his back. Guess you can't sneak up on demigods. Tough. As he spins around to find this Loa standing inches away from him, its luminous form glowing, spilling outward until it swallowed everything in the clearing, blinding Vol'jin to everything. And this glow surged until the clearing, the jungle, and even Vol'jin's body falls away, and he is consumed entirely by the spirit's radiance, not just in sight, sound, and weight, but filling every part of his being. And this trial was no longer about claws or fangs, but about revealing the truth to himself about who he was. And that's when Vol'jin finds himself in front of a cave, where the path splits in two, each side revealing a vision to him. And in the first one, he sits upon this throne of gold, surrounded by food and drink and dancing trolls doing the Shakira dance. Shakira, Shakira. And he looks healthy and content, yet a tiny golden chain shackles him to his throne. And in the other, he is battered and bleeding and locked in an endless battle where sometimes he led the Darkspears in a struggle and sometimes he fought alone, but it was always hardship, strife, and blood. One vision promised pleasure and captivity, and the other promised freedom through pain. And Vol'jin quite literally LOLs. He laughs at the situation and he's like, is this really supposed to be a test? He is like, I'd rather be free and struggling than be chained to anything. And the Loa is like, you know, you chose right. Good answer. However, that wasn't the test. The test was that if you even had considered the other option, you would have failed. And Vol'jin's like, oh, maybe I'm not the hot shit I thought I was.
What kind of Loa is this? You keep saying Loa.
You know, I tried to figure it out. I tried to get some maybe even just fan theories about what these possible Loa could be that he interacts with, especially this later one that we're going to come up on, because it says that it feels familiar to him. But it's never really made clear. You never really get any indication. And I tried looking throughout like some of the more well-known Loa to see if like perhaps it's like some indication that it's this one or that one. But we don't really get information. And especially given how light Loa information is in Warcraft 3, it's kind of questionable if we'll ever get it.
Okay.
Yeah. But as this cave dissolves and Vol'jin finds himself in the stands of a great arena, his hands older, scarred, and calloused from decades of battle. Around him sits elders of warriors of the Darkspear, but beyond them he sees orcs, Tauren, more, and all eyes are locked on the pit below, where two champions fight, a brown-skinned orc wielding a mighty axe, and a Tauren with a great spear. And immediately as he sees them, two names fill his mind: Garrosh and Cairne. And as these two titans clash back and forth, Cairne, this mighty Tauren, fights without flaw, untouched and unyielding, as Garrosh the orc bleeds from several wounds, yet continues to press on, his rage being used as a fierce weapon. And from his place just above, Vol'jin sees a sight even more impressive to him as he looks around and he sees that the Loa themselves have swarmed the arena, watching the fight with agitation and hunger. and he realizes that their presence signals one thing for this moment that was far greater than the battle of strength going on, that it was a turning point with consequences for the Darkspears and all of Azeroth. Vol'jin understands that this isn't just a vision about two champions, it's about the survival of the Darkspear, and that he knew that his people's path would be bound to these choices, these leaders, and the blood that would be spilt below. And as the orc's axe comes down with a shrieking arc, the grooves in the blade howling as the air rushes past, Cairne does his best to brace with the spear, and the parry fails, the weapon shattering as the blade barely grazes him. But regardless, as you've heard in our story before, Cairne sways, his fingers limp around his shattered spear, and in that moment of wrongness, Garrosh charges with Gorehowl raised high, bringing it down into Cairne's neck, as Vol'jin feels a stabbing pain in his heart, the feeling of grief echoing through time itself, mourning the loss of his friend and elder. And Vol'jin says that in that moment, his senses sharpen as if the universe itself held its breath before letting out a scream. He says that he was not only witnessing the death of a great Tauren, that he was feeling the weight of a great betrayal. And as the world hung still, the Loa then shrieked and raged, their whispers driving through Vol'jin's soul, and he alone understood the truth, that the axe had been poisoned. Cairne's death was not honorable, not the way of the warrior, but of treachery. And as his vision resumed, the Tauren struck the ground with a thud, blood spraying, and around the arena erupted into cheers, outrage, and disbelief, yet Vol'jin only heard the fury of the spirits, their outrage greater than any of the mortals. And the arena dissolves. Vol'jin once again is given a vision of a long line of Darkspears being led across an orange-hued land. Their faces seem etched with determination, and behind them Orgrimmar looms darker and sharper than ever before. And that's when this unease begins to open in Vol'jin's chest, and he asks the question that he's begun to consider of, where is Zalazane? Like, I need him now more than ever. Where is my most loyal companion? And that's when this Loa's voice once again rips through him, this heavy, ancient voice, and it reminds him of his earlier words, that survival was better than glorious death, to endure was to live. And it now demands answers. It says, you take the Darkspears from the safety of Orgrimmar. You can't make up your mind, he asks, and Vol'jin hesitates before he has no context, no clear guidance, only the weight of the choice with no obvious answer. And below, he sees that his people are restless, angry, and fearful. And as he turns his gaze back to the walls of Orgrimmar, he sees a figure that he recognizes to be Garrosh, standing with a faint, cruel smile, framed against the sky, the black tattoo on his jaw, a stark contrast to the light, as the war chief looks every bit the brute, gifted in war but blind to diplomacy. And Vol'jin understood that the Darkspears could survive in body by serving Garrosh, but in doing so they would lose their souls. This is why I really think that this story fits in right here, especially because this is going to lead into especially Miss Pandaria as shit really gets crazy with Garrosh. But yeah, I definitely think if we had talked about it back then, I would have been like, you'll see who Garrosh is. You'll understand who.
I mean, most people, I know there's some people who don't know WoW who listen to these, but most people know who Garrosh and his atrocities, I'll say.
Yeah. But for those who don't, for the newbies, shouts out to y'all. And through this, Vol'jin once again affirms his words. The Darkspears must survive, but it's worth nothing if they lose their souls. The Darkspears must be true. Be true. And with these words, the Loa mark Vol'jin forever, now granting him another gift, saying that he would hear the voices of the Loa always, and that it was no small burden, but it would be something that would grant him strength. As he finds himself snapping back to consciousness on the jungle floor, laying next to the fire that was running low, as insects had already begun crawling across his skin, prepping him for a snack, where he pops up, gets those bugs off of him, and he looks over to see Zalazane coming out of the tree line and sitting next to him, where they both share a moment of silence before finally Zalazane speaks, and he says that he had seen himself leading the Darkspear's warriors away from the tribe, that their leader had been so weak that he had sold them out, and in that moment Zalazane had rose in power, splitting the tribe in two. His refusal to look at Vol'jin said more than his words. He feared what the vision meant and who it condemned, and Vol'jin pokes at the fire, unsettled, simply saying, enough of these tests. And before long, eventually we come to a scene where Vol'jin is pacing, restless and angry, as he spins around the fire, his mental having been twisted by the visions and his body torn by the burdens of the jungle. And thinking about it, he's just like, I'm at my breaking point. Honestly, I need to go kill something. Zalazane, I'll be back. I'm gonna go kill something.
That is not a good way to deal with your emotions. Hey, you know how you're always telling people to listen to Tides of Lore?
Of course, I am my own biggest fan.
Well, now it's even easier. We're on Apple Podcasts, Audible, Castbox, Spotify, and YouTube.
So I can tell them, wherever you listen, that they can just hit subscribe or follow.
Exactly. No matter where you are, Azeroth stories will find you.
So Vol'jin is creeping through the dense jungle, brushing past all these leaves, when eventually he hears the sound of movement, first up ahead and then to his left, and then he circles carefully, trying to keep up with the noise on his right, but then it shifts again and the realization strikes that he was not hunting something, that he was being hunted, and his only choice was to seize on this initiative. So with a guttural cry, he does the most logical option, and he charges headlong into the shadows, glaive ready for killing whatever's on the other side. And as he hurls himself forward and collides with the figure, they fall together into the mud, and Vol'jin presses his glaive into the other's throat, expecting to find a beast or even some enemy trolls. There were rumors that some of the Gurubashi still inhabited the Darkspear island, but as the firelight catches the face of the figure beneath him, Vol'jin freezes and realizes it's none other than Sen'jin, his father, and shock tears through him as he pulls his weapon back, laughing at the absurdity of the situation, asking why his father is there. And Sen'jin smiles back and immediately strikes out in a burst of violence, swinging his staff as hard as he can, trying to kill Vol'jin. It says that he narrowly squirms away, avoiding a blow that would have absolutely crushed his ribs. And when he gets up to his feet, glaive in hand, he still doesn't attack, just asking his father, like, why are you doing this, Papa? But why? But as Vol'jin's heart breaks, his father continues to press on this attack, Sen'jin swinging his staff low, Vol'jin vaulting over it, only for his father to drive his head into Vol'jin's chest, knocking the air from his lungs and leaving him crumpled in the mud. Sen'jin once again advanced, spinning his staff like a reaper's blade as confusion and terror rips through Vol'jin, asking him, why are you doing this? Have I failed you? Have I failed Aloha? And with a desperation in his voice, he begs for an answer. And Sen'jin pauses, cold in his face. He says, you don't fight me because you think that you know me? You're weak. And with those words, he brings his staff crashing down on Vol'jin's outstretched hand. As the bones splinter underneath the blow, his thumb curling inward like a mangled talon. As Vol'jin rolls to his side, clutching at his ruined hand, everything past the wrist being broken, the thumb a pulpy mess, shock overtakes him as he looks up to see his father's feet walking away. As Sen'jin does not pause and does not look back, Vol'jin desperately cries out through the trees, Papa, but there is only silence in return. And after the shock finally fades, Vol'jin is forced to face himself with the reality of the situation. His thumb completely destroyed beyond repair. His glaive laying in the nearby mud, stained with his own blood. He knew what this meant, that without his thumb, he would never be able to fight the same. He would never be able to throw a knife properly. He would never wield his glaive properly again. But he does think, and he's like, good thing us trolls are blessed with regeneration. So as long as I'm willing to pay the price, the solution is simple. Terrible, but simple.
What does he have to do? Kill someone?
Something like that. So Vol'jin takes his glaive with his left hand, raising it high in the air, saying, I'm not going to close my eyes. I need to make sure that I'm precise with this. And as he brings it down, the blade whispering tears through his flesh and bone, cutting the mangled thumb from its hand as it gets sent flying off into the darkness, as Vol'jin refuses to let out a scream, instead biting his lips until they bleed as he rocks silently in the mud. So I guess they're like, it can get permanently crippled, but if you just chop the bitch off, it'll just regrow back as the same.
He's like a lizard with a tail.
Yeah, I guess. Exactly, yeah. But as he does this, a new Loa appears, glowing brighter and fresher. And this is the one that I mentioned before, that he says there seems to be something familiar about it, as if he has always known this spirit. And he begins slipping into another vision where he sees him leading a group of trolls through leaves, their burdens heavy, and his face carved with grief. And the vision shifts violently. Vol'jin is locked in battle with another troll, a witch doctor, wild-eyed and adorned with fetishes and a necklace of claws, and it is none other than his childhood friend of Zalazane. As his childhood friend fights with lethal intent towards him, chaos raging around them, the Loa's voice cuts through the class. You fight your own, another Darkspear, the friend of your childhood? And the question presses heavily on Vol'jin, forcing him to confront the possibility of betrayal and the agony of fighting one that he loves. And as the duel rages on, Vol'jin resists answering, instead remembering the truth of their bond, that they had grown together, they were inseparable, and that in that moment Vol'jin clung to the memory, even as the vision in front of them tried to pit them against each other as enemies. But in that moment, he looks down at his mangled hand, seeing the chopped finger, and he thinks the hard truth. He says, I will kill anyone who is a threat to the future of the Darkspears. It doesn't matter who. The tribe is everything. And the Loa approves. The familiar voice, unplaceable but praising, says, you didn't cut off the thumb to save your life. You did it to save your future. The Darkspears must be fierce, be true, endure. And in that moment, Vol'jin embraced the burden of leadership. The survival and strength of the tribe would always come before sentiment. And finally, Vol'jin asks the burning question in his heart, the one Tim asked earlier, who are you? And the Loa ignores him. Thanks. A lot of help. As it just booms with a finality saying, I grant you the power to commune with the Loa. We won't always do what you say, but we will always give you a fair hearing. Congratulations, you are now a Shadowhunter. As the light dims and fades away, it leaves Vol'jin marked forever. The boy who had entered First Home would now be able to emerge a Shadowhunter, chosen and sacred, a destiny to lead his people. And as they walk through this thick jungle, Vol'jin and Zalazane begin discussing what their visions truly meant, and Vol'jin rejects the idea that their futures were fixed, that they couldn't do anything about it. He insists that if he took part in a hunt and he killed something, that he made the choice to kill it. It was not foretold beforehand. And Zalazane somewhat agrees in part, but with a darker twist. He speaks of how weakness in one troll could create strength in another, and how one might rise only because the other had fallen. And Vol'jin once again counters firmly that their friendship would endure, and that together they could be fierce, true, and strong. And Zalazane gives a faint agreement, though he seems to lack the same hope in his tone. And as the two trolls finally leave the jungle, First Home finally behind them after a week of being out in there, they do their best to discuss with each other exactly what went on in their visions. But as they get further and further away from First Home, their memories become more and more strained. They struggle to remember the details, the faces, the words, the revelations. And all of it seemed deliberate, as though the Loa had chosen for those memories to leave them, and for them to only have what matter. The three words that lingered, carved into Vol'jin's soul. Endure, true, fierce. But as they get closer back towards their ancient home, they do find signs of violence, trampled leaves, streaks of blood, and the faint tang of smoke on the air. And Vol'jin freezes, every sense coming to alertness, as he sensed that something is fundamentally wrong on the island, that something has fundamentally changed. And he raises his hand for Zalazane to stop, and ahead, though the village was still hidden from sight, the air carried the unmistakable sounds of disruption, the hammering of tools, chopping of wood, the noise of work. As Vol'jin closes his eyes, listening for the whispers of the Loa, he tells Zalazane, I think our village got attacked. And Zalazane only nods, confident in his own methods of divination. As the two of them begin making their way forward, Vol'jin can already sense this unnatural distance growing between them, sensing that the Loa spoke differently to each of them, and that their paths were no longer perfectly aligned. But as they move cautiously through the brush, Vol'jin and Zalazane emerge to see their village devastated. Huts toppled, debris scattered, corpses lay neatly in rows on the edge of the village, and trolls weeping over their loved ones, tearing at their hair in anger, while priests mumbled prayers over the dead. and the scene was one of mourning and ruin, but also of grim order. The peaceful rhythms of island life had been broken by violence. As they jogged deeper into this wreckage, passing countless Darkspears, no one seems to stop them. Every troll that they see seemed to be consumed with grief or duty. And they look down near the lagoon where they see a bunch of crews organizing and building ships. Many ships. And Vol'jin mentions how just a week ago when they had left, that the tribe had been casually enjoying life, living almost luxuriously, and that it had completely shifted into something new, something disciplined, industrious, and driven. And in the village center, Vol'jin and Zalazane stand still among the chaos when they immediately sense somebody approaching, and they turn to find Master Gadrin, the tribe's chief witch doctor, who strides up and he's like, where have you guys been? We thought you died. And the two of them look at each other like, we were only in the jungle for like a week. Like, what are you talking about? And they're like, a week? Guys, you left 3 months ago. And that reality of time not really working very properly hits them. But that is only the start of it. As Gadrin explains to Vol'jin, he's like, oh, also got some really bad news. So these people showed up on the island, these green skin people, and Vol'jin immediately knows their name, orcs. And he's shocked. He's like, yeah, that's actually exactly them. Yeah, they showed up. And your dad kind of got into a beef with this Naga Sea Witch, and the Naga Sea Witch killed her. So he's dead. He's been claimed by Buon Samdi. He no longer walking on this plane of existence. And he's like, that's tough. He really has like no reaction to this. It's actually kind of crazy. He's just like crazy.
Anyways.
Yeah, basically, literally, he's like, oh no. Anyways, that the Sea Witch had proven too strong and that the Darkspears could no longer remain on this island, and he steps forward to claim responsibility of the Darkspear clan, vowing to oversee the evacuation of his people. And Zalazane comes to his side, promising to help, his familiar smile steadying Vol'jin through this storm. As Vol'jin grins back at his lifelong friend, logic tells him that he should keep Zalazane close, that together they would be true, fierce, and enduring, just like the spirits demanded. And that's where the end of his short story comes. And where we know what happens for the rest of it. Because, yeah, like we mentioned, those green-skinned orcs showed up to the island. Specifically, War Chief Thrall shows up, and he's like, hey guys, we're going to Durotar. You want to come? And they're like, we're down. So they leave. They hop on a boat and they cruise on out of there. And then the events of Warcraft 3 go on where they, battle the Burning Legion. And eventually you come to the orcs, or the Horde storyline in the Frozen Throne campaign, where eventually Admiral Dalen Proudmoore of Kul Tiras, Jaina Proudmoore's father, comes to the island. He fights with the trolls. The Horde fights back. Eventually he's killed with the help of Jaina. We've discussed a lot of this in the past, so if you are interested in that, again, check that out. But the Darkspears have now established a new home on a new island, the Echo Islands, out in Durotar, far to the south of Orgrimmar. And their new home, having already seen the battles of Admiral Proudmoore and the Burning Legion and all that, it already kind of feels like home to the trolls. Unfortunately for them, they can never seem to have peace because it seems to only last for a few good moments. As Tim has mentioned, they are constantly falling downwards.
All trolls. They never can catch a break, man.
Because it says that somewhere in the shadows of his heart, Zalazane falters. Vol'jin later reflects that it may have been the loss of Sen'jin or the bitter refrain of hearing Vol'jin named hero while he was only named as his companion, or perhaps it was something darker that none of them could ever know. Whatever the case, Zalazane's hunger for power twists into madness, and his ambition would scar the Darkspear forever. Because Zalazane begins using forbidden voodoo magic, stripping all the free will from these fellow trolls of his, and turning them basically into little drone zombies. And with that, one by one, these Darkspear trolls begin falling under his thrall, swelling his ranks until the number of free trolls dwindled, and his insidious sorcery of turning brother against brother would leave Vol'jin making an agonizing choice to abandon the Echo Isles. So the Darkspear are like, fuck, we can't catch a break. So they flee once again. This time, they're just off the shore of Durotar. They literally saw the next closest shore, and they're like, that's the spot.
That's home.
So yeah, they go and they establish what is known as the Sen'jin village. And that is where you would come in as a fresh-blooded, classic WoW playing troll.
The vicious trolls that populate the numerous jungle isles of the South Seas are renowned for their cruelty and dark mysticism. Barbarous and superstitious, they carry a seething hatred for all other races. Long since exiled from its ancestral homeland in Stranglethorn Vale, the Darkspear tribe was nearly destroyed by rampaging murlocs. Rescued by the young war chief Thrall and his orcish warriors, the Darkspear tribe swore allegiance to the Horde. Led by the cunning Shadowhunter Vol'jin, the Darkspears now make their home in Durotar, along with their orcish allies. As one of the only surviving Darkspears, it falls to you to reclaim the glory of your tribe.
Well, they actually start at the Valley of Trials, but whatever you
Well,
want.
yeah, I mean, you'd be over there, but this is where in the story you as a classic troll would come in. There you are, looking good. But yes, eventually you would aid the Darkspear, joining yourself and other Horde allies in launching these raids on the Echo Isle, determined to reclaim the ancestral home. Well, it's hard to even call it an ancestral home. That seems a bit wrong. The home of the Darkspear trolls, and time again they would strike at Zalazane's forces, breaking his defenses, only for the mad witch doctor to strike back, as Zalazane would refuse to yield, sending his thralls of zombie Darkspear to enslave more and more people, swelling his army with stolen willpower. As Zalazane would begin poisoning the very Echo Isles themselves, disrupting Durotar's flow of magic as he would scatter these tainted fetishes, dark juju heaps, as they're called, across the isle that would foul the area and warp the wildlife, empowering warlocks and all sorts of creepy things that would exist on the isle. And in response, once again, you are called to go and deal with him and stop, all of his tomfoolery that he's getting up to, as you are like, he's like, hey, go dismantle those heaps and purge the corruption. So of course you're like, 30 copper? Of course. I don't even think it's that much. I think it's like 10 copper back at level like 8.
More importantly, the XP.
That's what we do it for. And the love of the game. But yes, as many brave trolls and Horde champions once again storm the Echo Isles to dismantle these heaps and break the sorcery that Zalazane has over them, you even go in there and you slay Zalazane. And every once in a while, an adventurer would return with his head from the Echo Isles. But each victory was an illusion, because days later, this spell on this head would unravel, and the trophy would reveal itself to be nothing more than painted stones, coconuts, or even sometimes the severed head of one of the zombie trolls under Zalazane's dark magic, the witch doctor's cunning, mocking their every attempt to kill him, basically stating that he could not be slain so easily.
Wait, so we didn't kill him in Classic?
Nope.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And I actually don't hate this one, not as much as I dislike like the Sicko Thermoplug one.
Right,
Because this one feels a bit more like magical and cool.
Right.
Like, because this person like literally saw a reality warp and stuff like that. So for it to have it feel that way, I think that's cool. But after years of waiting and planning, Vol'jin gathers a mighty army of the Horde, and with the elements at their side and the beasts of Durotar answering their calls, the Darkspears march on the Echo Isles one last time. And as legions of hex trolls bar their way, they get cut down one after another, their determination of the trolls fueled by years of exile, where at last they finally stand before Zalazane himself. The final reckoning has come. And when finally cornered, Zalazane flees deeper into the Echo Isles, cloaking himself in foul magics, and he raises up a magical shield, claiming that no mortal could ever pierce it, as he turns more and more hexed trolls against their chieftain. Boasting about his invincibility, he declares that no living thing could harm him, and just as the words leave his mouth, a mocking laughter echoes across the battlefield.
Sooner or later, everyone comes to me.
Appearing in the scene is none other than Bwansamdi, the Loa of the dead himself. As his spirit arrives, it sends shivers through all those present, and Zalazane has forgotten that death itself is no living thing. And Bonsamdi, insulted by Zalazane's theft of souls, unleashes his wrath as the Loa raises legions of his own undead zombies who tear apart Zalazane's barrier, and with a terrible surge, Bonsamdi blows up Zalazane from within, ending his reign once and for all. And in the aftermath, Vol'jin reflects that perhaps in Zalazane's final moments, his friend would have returned to sanity. And he's like, at least that's what I would have liked to believe. Hopefully he was free of the madness that consumed him. Bonsamdi!
Bonsamdi!
Ugh. I can hear his laugh. I wish I could replicate his laugh, but I'm throwing it in there. But yes, with Zalazane's fall, the Darkspear reclaim the Echo Isles, and that's where we come to the era of the Cataclysm, where you will once again be a fresh-blooded troll looking to start anew in Cataclysm Classic if that's your thing, or if you're just playing.
Exiled years ago from their lands in Stranglethorn Vale, the Darkspear trolls attempted to make a new life for themselves amongst the disparate races of the Horde. Under the leadership of the noble war chief Thrall, Vol'jin and his savage trolls had at last found the honor and purpose they had been searching for. But now, under the rule of the headstrong Garrosh Hellscream, the trolls fear that the Horde could tear itself apart. Vol'jin knows that whatever threats loom ahead, whether they be from within the Horde or from without, it is cunning trolls like you who will fight to preserve the honor of the Horde.
Now, having the ability to start the Echo Island starting experience, which, to be honest, is quite literally, 7 quests. I was kind of shocked. The Night Elves got, 17 quests in, 3 different zones, and y'all got, 7.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of quests to kill trolls.
We see where Blizzard lies on this. But yes, as the Isles become this new starting ground for their trolls, their training is overseen by a figure known as Zuni. And as you continue forth, you begin to gain indications that the raptors around the land are restless and that their behavior is strange and unnatural, as you begin to realize that some of the residual magics the Zalazane had left behind are still affecting the wildlife. So you go and you handle that. And that's when it comes kind of into what is the major story, and that is, hey, you know Garrosh Hellscream, right? Well, after Cairne died, unfortunately, Garrosh kind of becomes a bigot, and he no longer wants anybody besides orcs hanging out in Orgrimmar. He's like, how about you guys go shoo-shoo and leave us, top dogs to our hole in the dirt. So he really alienates a bunch of the other races of the Horde, specifically the Tar and then the Trolls. And we'll see this a lot more in the future, but know that is what eventually leads Vol'jin to being like, all right, well, fuck you, Garrosh. I'm going to withdraw most of the Darkspear out of Orgrimmar, and we're going to go, post up in the Echo Isles. You can do your own thing. We'll do our thing. Good luck. So they go, and they fully resettle back on the Echo Isles. And shit goes wrong again. My God, they cannot catch a fucking break. This is insanity. Because as soon as they set up, you remember that Naga Sea Witch that killed Sen'jin's dad? She's back. And apparently she's made it her whole life goal to just kill the Darkspear. It has to have been 10 years since she last saw one. But she's like, I'm back. Time to die. And I imagine Vol'jin saw her this time, and he was like, oh, actually, I've been waiting for you to return. I've been dreaming of this moment. It's time for violence. Who you want me kill, So he rallies his tribe, refusing to flee, and he calls for an all-out assault on the Naga's entrenched northern isle. And in a climactic battle, he confronts the Sea Witch directly, killing her and avenging his father by slaying her. And in that moment, this burst of immense magical power is released by her body, and Vol'jin somehow magically seizes this moment, and he calls up Thrall, and he's like, what that? And Thrall is just like, hey man, I'm here at the Maelstrom trying to prevent the world from breaking down. What's up? And he's like, did you know that Garrosh is kicking everybody out of Orgrimmar? And Thrall quite literally just goes, oh, no, I didn't know that, but I trust my judgment that he's what the Horde needs right now. And Vol'jin goes, okay, Thrall, Talk to you later. What is this storyline?
I mean, Thrall just doesn't
And
give a
as-
fuck anymore, man. He doesn't care. And I think that's what we can deduct.
He got himself some fine shit and he no longer cares anymore.
Yeah.
But yeah, he even mentions to him, he's like, I'm considering having us like leave, like we should leave the Horde. And Thrall's like, no, like I promise you it'll get better. In this time of need, the Horde needs the Darkspear. And that's why eventually Vol'jin's just like, all right, fine, I will agree to Thrall's request of staying in the Horde. Even though I still believe this is probably going to lead to some conflict. And that is where the trolls, for the most part, will stay until we see some other figures, like some Zandalari and this guy, this other prophet that we're going to talk about here in a little bit. So when we get to that, we get to that. But that is all that we have to talk about today. Tim, do you have any questions or comments about this episode?
I did, but you explained it. I was going to ask about Zalazane, and because to a certain point, I was like, why the fuck did we kill him?
Mm-hmm.
But you eventually did explain it. So, no, I don't have anything.
It's not a very convincing, like, betrayal. Like, I think betrayal is one of the most common tropes that they use in WoW, and this one was like, and then he hates it. And he does. Sorry, the path has said that you gotta hate each other. And it's just like, oh, okay. But I do like it when, like, even early game content, like the fact that he's literally a level 10 NPC, has such in-depth lore. I think it makes it feel a lot more alive. Like, oh, damn, this is the guy that, did XYZ things. I think it's part of the reason why a lot of people like Dead Mines and stuff like that, because Edwin Van Cleef and his story with the Stonemasons and everything like that.
Yeah, it's part of the reason why Classic was good. You don't have that as much anymore.
Yeah, it's hard to do the macro scale with everything being on a cosmic scale. But yeah, that is all that we have to talk about with you guys this week. If you did make it this far and you enjoyed your time, please make sure you drop us a like, a follow. If you want to check out our podcast on any of our new platforms, we are now on a bunch of new ones, on Apple Podcasts, on Audible, on Castbox, anything that produces sound, we're probably on there. So go ahead and show us some support if you do prefer those platforms. Otherwise, we really do appreciate your time here. We did just launch a Patreon, so we are really trying to encourage people to check that out if they are so interested. So that'll be down in the description below. Otherwise, thank you so much for your guys' time, and we will see you guys next week. Thank you so much for making it to the end of this episode. Your guys' support truly means the world to us. If you're interested in hearing more, we have our full show on YouTube and Spotify, new episodes dropping every Tuesday. I also want to take this moment to give a special thank you to Fantasy Lo-Fi for providing the music for this episode. You can find them on YouTube at Fantasy Lo-Fi or on Spotify under Bits and Hits. Be sure to show them some love, as their music does truly bring this journey to life. Once again, thank you for joining us on Tides of Lore, and we will see you next week.